Welcome back. My name is Priyanka Bhide. I'm the co-founder of Kuber9 Initiative. We are a policy advisory firm that works a lot on gender. And since we're short on time, I'm actually going to jump right into the session. Um, the main point of discussion here is that there's been an increase in women labor force participation, but it's focused very much in the informal sector. So before we get into the how do we make this shift, I want to start with why this gap exists. And I'm going to start with Soumya. Because you work in the security space, and that's a space where you don't see too many women. Right. So if you could make it personal and tell us why do you think, in your opinion, one or two reasons, not too many, and 2 minutes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. So, as promised, I'll be 2 minutes. And also, I apologize if there is more male bashing on this panel. Don't take it personally. But yes, there are very few women who work on the field in the field of national security because there is a lot that you deal with when you're working on it. We are not uniformed people who know how to handle weapons. But then we also get into these uncharted territories at times where you need to deal with the present scenario where you need to have presence of mind and react to the situation accordingly. Sometimes the gap exists because lack of understanding, lack of opportunities, but also the lack of courage on the part of women. So it's not always men who are pulling them down, but also women having this constant fear to not take that bold step. So that's where I would like to begin with saying that the gap also exists because we are allowing that to exist. And other than that, yes, there is also a culture thing that exists in India because we are told in certain manner. The wiring of the brain is such that we are told that women or girls have to do certain kind of jobs, and you can be best a teacher or a professor but not go out and be a police officer. Of course, a lot has changed. There has been a generational shift. A lot of women are going in doing a lot of other things. Toppers from IIT are maximum women, and clearing their engineering exams are women. Here also there are a lot of women, but then that culture that is there, that also plays a role of a block, a hurdle in the rise of women.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, and culture, especially because depending on which state you look at, the family structure is very different, right? And then the expectations from women are that, for example, I'm from Maharashtra, and it's quite normal for women in Maharashtra to work, but yet there are limits as to what they can do and how ambitious they can be, because they will still be expected to take part in care work, and if a family member is sick, then naturally it will be the woman of the house that takes on that responsibility, right? So it's quite a complex reason, of course, which is why I feel it's important that we surface some of these reasons before we move into looking at how we can bridge these gaps. And I'll come next to Dr. Munir. This could be from your professional background or personal, I keep it open, and 2 minutes.
So let me keep it little academic. I did my PhD on non-timber forest products. Okay, and my field study, although I was registered in Australia, but I had a field in Jharkhand, Khunti. So these non-timber forest products are mostly collected by women, mostly because it is a secondary source of income that is generated by the female counterpart. The male counterpart, either they are in the agricultural labor or they go to the cities for in search of jobs. So what we have found is that it is an informal sector, unregulated sector, and no policy measure whatsoever. And the recommendations that were suggested through the research were that if we can create small scale enterprises based on these products on ground, so that we have those women collectives. For example, if you take Bihar into consideration, we have more than around 10 lakh SHGs. There are more than 10 crore women associated to these SHGs. There is around 105 crore rupees that share capital that has been invested in this. It's Bihar alone through Jivika. Okay, so we are pushing a good sort of money a policy incentivization is also there, but how impactful it is, it is questionable. Yesterday, we were having a discussion with some block level officers who are implementing these Jivika programs on ground. We were asking them about the impact created by Jivika on ground because the money is being pushed for the women empowerment. They had no answer. They said just we do some sort of interventions and then the leakage of impact is there. So on one
Sorry,
side,
if I can just follow up and interrupt you,
yeah.
which is this is really interesting. So, but why do you think then, if there's such a push, if you could give any examples, anonymous, we will not hold you to it.
I
As
can't
to
see.
as to why do you think it's not translating?
It is translating. See, it's not about not translating. It is translating. There is a transition in the living standards of women. See, Nalanda University has adopted a Sahabagita program. We have 5 adjacent villages where we are trying to have these Jivika Didis working inside the institution and formalize them through the SHG. There are multiple schools outside Nalanda University where Jivika Didis go and cook food for in the midday meal Anganwadi system, where the whole discourse comes that child care, women participation, informal economy. So it is creating the impact. It is transitioning, but impact creation through impactful studies where we can calculate the impact on ground, how much impact has been created, how much employment was generated, how much formalization was done, how policy push could be further strengthened, is sort of a research question that is going around, and we are at the school level thinking of taking up all these research and see how these impactful programs are creating a real-time impact and how they are to be documented so that they are case studies and to be replicated in other states.
Thank you. I will come back to you though for the solution.
Once again, in the document that has been prepared by ORF, where we see that their LFPR in 2017 was 23 and it is 42% now. Out of this 42%, how much is the formal economy where the woman is employed? It is only 18%, whereas the male counterpart is 42. The earning gap is around 75% between male and female counterpart. Whereas the child care, 5 hours per day, a woman takes care, 1 hour male. And then there is a study by McKinsey. They say that if the woman converts into the production and then you have that parity away, there will be around $7 billion of addition to the GDP alone by having women, the role of women more productively used in the labor sector. So these are some of the considerations that we have to take up. And then there are global examples where we can compare India with Sweden. We can compare India with Bangladesh.
Yes, we'll come to that later. But I still want to just spend a little bit time on surfacing why, right? Why is it that women are choosing the informal sector? And Adita, I know you've done some work in rural areas of India. So if you could share with us what you've seen, why do women make these choices? Are these family choices? And, what's shaping the trajectory there?
Yeah, right. So before I begin, just by way of introduction, I am currently associated with the Guwahati University, but I work quite closely with the government of Assam, the intersection of policy and political strategy, and that involves a lot of policy design and implementation on the ground. And what I'm actually going to share today here is basically drawn from my observations from the field and drawing on what Dr. Munir said and what the moderator just raised. Why is the majority of the labor participation of women limited to the unorganized space? Why is it in the rural areas? So I would just like to share 3 examples that I have noticed. Okay, so the first is a lack of training and sustained support that play a role in limiting women's access to higher productivity jobs. So there are a lot of government schemes that give out financial assistance for starting women-led businesses, for startups, even to SSGs. Very recently, the Assam government announced 10,000 rupees seed capital for SSGs. And if that is successfully utilized, then they can apply for the second and the third tranche. Now, what often happens is that this is not followed up by the necessary training that is required to start a business. So what in essence happens is that on paper, the government is spending a lot of money, a lot of budgetary allocation is going into women-led businesses. However, it is not being able to, they're not being able to sustain it or translate it into something that is from where they're being able to generate a livelihood from. So that is one point. These are not I mean, these issues have come up earlier. A lot of researchers working on the ground have raised the problems of training not being sufficiently provided, after which there were a lot of policy redesigning that we did. Ever since, training has been included as a part of several of these policy schemes. But then there were other issues that we could not foresee. For example, training was provided to women during a time which was the farming season, and most of these women could not afford to forego a day of farm labor just to go attend a training session. Sometimes the training sessions would be a little farther off. Families would not allow them to go attend these sessions, or sometimes even if they were allowed from their family side, the auto or the bus fare just would be too expensive for them to carry out these training sessions for a prolonged period of time. So that is one reason that we saw that a lot of these businesses were not being able to take off. The other issue, I would say, so a large section of rural non-farm employment, specifically in Assam, is related to SAG-supported weaving industry. It is a huge industry in Assam. It employs lakhs of weavers. And it contributes a significant percentage of the state's GDP as well. It is a booming industry, but the women who are the primary workforce in this industry actually end up earning paltry amounts because they have no access to markets. There are no market linkages. There's no training on financial literacy, which is why we will see that what the designers and the middlemen are earning out of this industry is a lot more than what the women are making out of this. And the third reason I think is applicable across the country, across sectors, actually, which is a concern of safety. Workplace harassment, workplace abuse largely limits women, I think. This is especially true in rural areas where after a point women become a little apprehensive. There are a lot of other issues that we can go on into, including the unpaid labor that women are engaged in at home. But I would stop here for now.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Adhika. That was very succinct. Dr. Hakim, if I could now turn to you, and if you could share from your experience why you think this gap exists in 2 minutes, so that we can move to the next section.
अभी तक जो काम किया हुआ है, I am right now leading one of the government of India की जो एक scheme है, विश्वकर्मा. For Jammu and Kashmir, I am looking after that. Surprisingly, when we see about Vishwakarma, as for अभी तक जो 2 सालों में उस पे काम हुआ है, लगभग 20 लाख लोग उसमें ट्रेन हो गए और बेनिफिशियरी है उसमें, और उसमें जो है लगभग 7.8 लाख आर वीमेन, और ये सारे इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर से आते थे और अभी ये फॉर्मल सेक्टर में आ रहे हैं. फॉर्मल सेक्टर में इन द सेंस, मतलब अगर आप एक ऑर्डिनरी वीमेन को देखेंगे जो कभी स्कूल नहीं गई हैं, जिसने कोई फॉर्मल एजुकेशन नहीं है, as per the scheme guidelines we are providing them NSQ of level 2.5, that is equivalent to matric, right? तो एक तरीके से ये देखा जाता है कि इसमें इस स्कीम के तहत आप एक एजुकेटेड जो है लोग यूज करते हैं, उसमें मतलब एजुकेशन आ जाती है. एट द सेम टाइम गवर्नमेंट इज प्रोवाइडिंग फाइनेंशियल सपोर्ट विद द टूल्स, जो इसमें 18 अनऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर से जो फॉर्मल सेक्टर में आने की कोशिश करे, वो 18 ऐसे सेक्टर है जिसमें आप देखेंगे मेसन्स, कारपेंटर्स, मतलब ऐसे फील्ड्स में हमने देखे विमेन आए हैं. एंड सेकेंडली आई विल शेयर वन ऑफ द एग्जाम्पल जिस पे हमने जम्मू कश्मीर में काम किया एज एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. तो यू माइट हैव हर्ड द नेम पश्मीना. पश्मीना, द फेमस ट्रेडिशनल शॉल, इट्स 2300-year-old traditional art, but it is dying. Since industrial revolution came and in 2010 or 12 के बाद पूरा ये इंडस्ट्री ने इसको हड़प लिया, जबकि एक हैंडीक्राफ्ट हुआ करता था. और उस सिलसिले में जो इसमें कारीगर हुआ करते थे, जो हाथ से काम होता था, वो ऑलमोस्ट उनसे चला गया. लगभग इसमें 2 लाख कश्मीरी विमेन इसमें इन्वॉल्व थे, एंड एट अ स्ट्रेच ऑफ 2-3 years they all became jobless. What we did, इसको पूरा इसके बैकग्राउंड को अंडरस्टैंड करके we take a pilot project of 100 women. We provided them raw material. रॉ मटेरियल के साथ उनको मार्केट दिया. मतलब एक तो उन्होंने पहले वो जो प्रोडक्ट अपना बनाया, नॉर्मली इससे पहले क्या करते थे, वो सिर्फ एज अ लेबर, एज अ वेज वो काम करते थे, बट वो हमने रिवर्स इंजीनियरिंग इसमें की, जो बीच में इसमें लोग होते, मिडिल मैन जो होते, जो फिर इंटरनेशनल मार्केट में इसको बेचते, पश्मीना, मतलब ये इट्स इलीट इलीट सॉर्ट ऑफ थिंग, मतलब यानी कि हर एक बंदा ये यूज नहीं करता है। मतलब इफ यू विल सी ए नॉर्मल शॉल, इट कॉस्ट 18 to 20,000 रुपी, सबसे लोवेस्ट जो शॉल होता है इसमें। व्हाट वी डिड, जब हमने इसको इंटरनेशनलाइज कर दिया, इंटरनेशनल मार्केट में बेच दिया, उसका जो रेवेन्यू आ गया वो डायरेक्टली हमने इन वुमेन्स को दे दिया। तो वो एक हमने देखा, वो एक सक्सेस, जहां पे एक औरत जो मेयर, उसका तो पूरा मान लीजिए वो जॉब ही चला गया था, वो खत्म ही हो गया था, एक तो वापस उस पे लाया, एंड एट द सेम टाइम दे बिकेम एंटरप्रेन्योर्स नाउ। So now they are creating their initial level pay. We supported them with the raw material and all that. And later, once they get that money, they started their own product. Now they are selling. We have our own website, online e-commerce website, और international market में इसको दे दिया. Plus, I want to share one more experience जो post pandemic जो हमारे साथ मतलब एक situation आ गई थी, और उस सिचुएशन में एक वीमेन का रोल क्या रहा था जो हमने डील किया। यू माइट बी रिमेम्बरिंग द पैंडेमिक, वो कितनी खतरनाक सिचुएशन सब लोगों के लिए थी। और मैं जम्मू कश्मीर की बात कर रहा हूँ। जम्मू कश्मीर में व्हेन इट वाज अबाउट इनिशियल डेज जो थे जब पैंडेमिक आया था, तो द मेन रिक्वायरमेंट वाज पीपी किट्स, एंड मैं ब्रीफली बताऊंगा इस पे। और उस पीपी किट को मैन्युफैक्चर करने के लिए वो एक चैलेंज था, मतलब पूरी कंट्री में वो चैलेंज था, एंड सेम फॉर द जम्मू एंड कश्मीर। व्हेन वी डिसाइडेड टू चिप इन विद द गवर्नमेंट, मतलब गवर्नमेंट ने पूरा उसमें सपोर्ट दे दिया। हमारे साथ जो विडोज, जो ऐसी औरतें, जो अंडर प्रिविलेज्ड औरतें थी, जो कहीं ना कहीं उन लोगों ने अपने लेवल पे वो सीखा हुआ था, सो थोड़ी सी वो टेलरिंग वगैरह, तो वी डिड वर्कशॉप विद देम एंड वी ट्रेन्ड देम। इट टुक अस जस्ट 3 or 4 days to make them aware about what we are going। जब हमने प्रोटोटाइप को पास कर दिया, एंड सरप्राइजिंगली इसकी सारी प्रोडक्शन जो थी ना, वो सारे हमारे साथ विमेन जुड़े थे, एंड वी वेर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सम 5,300 PPE kits per day, and we were catering whole state that time for first 2.5 months। That's from my side।
Thank you very much. Actually, this is a good bridge as well, because you've already brought in great examples of, that Dr. Munir also mentioned, to realize this $7 billion dividend, and you all are already doing some excellent initiatives. So I'm going to just carry that thought forward, because now I'll get into the questions that were already laid out in this session. I'm going to club 2 of the questions, right? How do we then bring about this shift to recognize care work as work, to ensure that women get high-paying jobs in the formal sector and ensure growth? What are the 4 aspects we look at, and you can pick up whichever aspect is most suitable to your area of work. What are the policy drivers? What are the industry drivers, cultural drivers, or innovational drivers? And I can start off by saying some of the things that I've both heard and been involved in. One, I heard an excellent talk by Dr. Shamika Ravi the other day, where she mentioned if the taxation system were to change in a way that you are taxed as a family unit, and then you account for both husband and wife working, and give some sort of tax benefits, and that might actually help them as a family pay for some childcare support and other support. And another thing that we have been involved in terms of the cultural innovational drivers, as Kuber9, we've run a whole host of workshops where we do scenario-based workshops to surface some of the biases within various workspaces and address them head on, right? Because very often, while the policies exist even in professional workspaces, whether you're talking about the not only the policy sector, but even the industry, when people still come with their biases, right? Because they come from families that are patriarchal and think a certain way. And so if you actually have these discussions, you surface some of these issues that are then addressed head on. So I will then move to you, Soumya, and I know you wanted to add on also some things. So maybe you could do both together. And this time you will have, each of you will have a longer time period, so 3 minutes.
So I was listening to all my panelists, and they were talking about how women representation has improved, and there are more women in the labor market and labor sector. But at the same time, I feel that even though the participation has increased, is it really translating into empowerment of those women? The answer is mixed for me. I mean, these are my observations, that I find that empowerment is not as much as the representation is. The visibility doesn't mean that there is a structural change, because sometimes it's tokenism as well. So you show because, okay, we need to show that we are equally worried or care about women. So sometimes some organizations also get into those kinds of situations, and then they try to fix it by bringing in some women. So question comes back to the answers that came up previously. And when you talk about the biases, and because my field is very different from the rest of the three here, I work on the security and national security. So many a times I have personally experienced that at the decision level roles, there are many times no women. I stay in Delhi. If I count how many think tanks have women as director generals, none. There was one who retired, but after that, nobody has actually filled that spot. But that question comes like, why is it like this? Is it because there is a perception in the mind that women cannot work after 5 p.m., or they can't hang out with their male counterpart in the bar, and go and talk to them post work networking? So those kinds of perceptions exist, and that sometimes also impacts the women role. And again, there are certain boundaries that have to be drawn when women are working, in the sense that you can't call women after 9 p.m. because it's inappropriate time to call. And that's how many times women who actually have a lot more to contribute sometimes get ignored, or they don't get equal opportunity. But I also want to give hope to the younger lot sitting here, that it's not the case all the time. There are organizations where women are actually getting more and more role in the decision making. They are part of the panels, they are part of the editorial boards, and they are also part of carrying out events. ORF is one example where we take gender representation very, very seriously, and we ensure that women are equally represented. They get equal opportunity to hold forums and go through events and things like that. So there is shift, but there is, like, it's a mixture right now. You can't say that everything is ticky boo, but also there is not everything is not gloomy as well. So that's what I wanted to add to your previous discussion, and also to the present question that you said, that is there any biases that are involved? Because also another thing that I just come across is that when you send women to field work, there is a security factor that comes in, that who will look after women's security. That was the reason for many years women were not recruited enough in the armed forces, and they thought that it's difficult to bring them in the commanding roles. And so that again has changed, but then the security factor remains one of the biggest examples. I'll give a personal anecdote here, that I was going for field work to Afghanistan, and the first question that came to my family was, are you going to meet Talibanis and will you be safe? Will you wear burqa? They had nothing else but these kinds of questions to ask, because we live in a society where you have these issues, real time issues. But then it is also on the women to ensure that, how to gain that confidence. And it can only happen if you are true to your own profession, work hard enough to get all those, answers, and also prove that without you, this work cannot be done. So that also is the duty and responsibility is also on women for that.
Excellent. Power to you, Dr. Soumya. We need more like you. I will now move to Dr. Munir. I know you have already touched on some of the initiatives that you're doing here at Nalanda, but if you could speak more. And of course, we need women to be courageous, but we also need society to support women. So if you have any thoughts and ideas.
So where she left that the role of women in the corporate sectors or at the highest level. So on the policy side, if you see, we have Maternal Benefit Act, we have Equal Remuneration Act, we have wage codes, we have 73 and 74 constitutional amendment where the representation of women. Unfortunately, in Bihar, through this constitutional amendment, we have 50% of the women's role in the local body representation. Then we have this Women Reservation Act in 2023. So we will have to see how impactful these legal regulations have been. So because policy push is very important, because they are the facilitators to put impact on ground. One thing that has to be taken into consideration. Second, what she said, if you see Japan had this problem of aging, and they could see that the labor shortage. And what they did is they started their corporate disclosures in ESG. When we write sustainability reports, we have a governance section in at the top level. So in governance section, what we do is we try to see how governance mechanism was taken care by the company itself. If now how is this beneficial to the companies? It is beneficial in attracting the investments. If your sustainability report reflects that you have done very good environment, you have done very good in social, and you have done very good in governance, and in governance you have had this women participation and all that, so your responsible business management reflects through that sustainability report, and your investments and your shareholders, stakeholders increase. So this is one aspect of that. But unfortunately, see, Companies Act 2013 says that you need to have one independent board woman as a board director. Okay, but Schedule 7 in Companies Act talks about CSR, corporate social responsibility. Now, corporate social responsibility is implemented through CSR committees. And in CSR committees, there is no mandate of having a woman in the committee. It should be there because corporate social responsibility projects are more or less on women empowerment. Every company across more than 50,000 more than 50,000 crore rupees were invested through CSR in 2024 to 5. How much women participation was in these projects has to be seen on ground, because it's a lot of money that has been invested in multiple projects. Now, sir talked about Vishwakarma. What we do through these CSR projects, we do vocational trainings for women. But what exactly do we do with those vocational trainings after completion of the trainings? We go away. I am from Delhi. I came in Rajgir. I invested 50 lakh rupees in doing those trainings, and I went away. What about the impact? How much of them got the job? Where they got the job? What is the retention? Now, the retention is also the leadership problem that the companies are facing. Now, a leader, in some countries, you get a waiver of the tax if you retain your employees. You are investing in your employees. They are performing for you. They are productive. That has to be taken into consideration. They at the policy and at the legal level. Now, coming to the comparative examples, see France. They have universal child care scheme. Universal. Sweden, they have more than 498 days for women as a this paternal or the maternal leave. You have job security. You have 30 days for men. Bangladesh, 38, more than 3 million women in the garment sector alone as a formal employee. So all this, then you have Vietnam, completely dominating electronics market by the women. So all this has to be taken into consideration, and then we have to see how to push it forward. There are dimensions through the legal intervention. There are dimensions through the policy push, dimensions through the think tank deliberations from the academia side. Money is required. Without money, it is not possible. So we'll have to see this as a holistic picture. We don't have to take the bits and pieces or into the silos. It's a complete comprehensive package that we have to develop, and then we have to move. You have this BRICS Women Business Alliance, 9 I think 6 working groups, 9 chapters, completely dominated by the women, and the 2 projects, if I'm not wrong, one is on cotton, the other is on the symphony, the orchestra women, those who are they are bringing them together. So we will have to have these large scale plans, strategies to see how to move forward and how to see the more participation of women in the formal sector. Policy push as well as the other components have to be pitched in. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Munir, and also for sharing the very excellent examples from Southeast Asia, where the conditions are also similar. They share many similarities. Adita, I have already mentioned, I know the training and the gaps in training, but if you would like to add anything more in terms of recommendations to make this shift.
Yeah, just one very small, quick point. Just drawing from what Soumya already highlighted, I think it is a lived reality for a lot of women across sectors, across the countries, wherein I think cultural biases, societal norms are a big hindrance in terms of women actually, regardless of the sector they are in. And this is further exacerbated, obviously, when you are in an unorganized sector, which is primarily the sector I focus on. So there are, before I even begin to describe what those are, I've already touched upon some of them, but there are inherently a lot of these biases that are perpetuated, sometimes mostly unintentionally, even by political parties or even in terms of policy making. For example, when you, before an election going state, you see a job being promised to a man and 2,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees given to a woman as an allowance to run the household. The understanding is very clear behind that. And I'm not disagreeing with the intention of the money being given out, wherein it helps the woman actually run the household without actively depending on the men for it. But what it also does is perpetuates those culture biases, so societal norms. Most of the areas that I have worked in, which I had already spoken about earlier, unpaid labor is a huge reason why most of these women cannot transition into a more formal sector or take out more time to actually join the workforce. Infrastructural lack of infrastructure also by the state in terms of supply of drinking water, for example. These are also reasons that disproportionately affect the women in the household, because then they have to go get water, they have to handle a lot of these things. So, infrastructural amenities by the government, amenities like the Anganwadi system or the national creche system, which is woefully underfunded, by the way. All of these policy measures could actually maybe slightly improve the conditions and bring more women into the workforce. Formalizing obviously will take a lot more deliberation into how, what kind of policies would actually bring more women into the workforce and into a space where they're not as unorganized as they are.
Thank you, Adita. And Mr. Hakim, if I could again come back to you, if you had any further suggestions to add.
I am very much optimistic when we are dealing with the women thing. Listen, जब हम एक चीज पे जाते हैं कि डिस्क्रिमिनेशन की जहां पे बात करते हैं, तो दैट्स ऑलवेज देयर. मतलब हम ये एक्सेप्ट करें एज अ मेल या ना करें, बट दिस इज ट्रू, थिंग्स आर देयर. लेकिन when we are trying to find out the results, how we can get out of these things, we need to take small initiatives, right? जैसे कि मैंने अपनी कुछ एग्जांपल्स दी. what piece of bit I can do, let us start with those things, right? मतलब जैसे कि अभी हम बात कर रहे थे, सर ने भी अभी ट्रेनिंग के बारे में बात करी, उसमें एक बड़ी खामी है. बहुत सारे स्कीम्स गवर्नमेंट ने ऑलरेडी बनाए हुए हैं, लेकिन एक मॉनिटरिंग मैकेनिज्म वो थोड़ा सा कमजोर है. मतलब जो थिंक टैंक है यहाँ पे, इनको उस चीज के बारे में सोचना चाहिए, हाउ वी कैन मेक द मॉनिटरिंग एंड एक्चुअल बेनिफिशरीज क्या, उसके बाद चाहे कोई ट्रेनिंग दी, चाहे कोई लोन दिया, क्या उसके बाद उसका इम्पैक्ट कुछ आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है. But again, coming to the point, when it comes to monitoring, मतलब I am personally involved in these things, you know. तो जब हम जम्मू कश्मीर की बात करते हैं, मैं अपने स्टेट की बात करूंगा, we have some 450,000 MSMEs, out of which 1.25 is female, you know. जब हम सक्सेस की बात करते हैं, ये मैं गवर्नमेंट डेटा बता रहा हूँ आपको, पिछले 5 सालों का मैं जब डेटा एनालाइज किया गया, तो उसमें से 80% MSMEs जो मेल डोमिनेंट थे, देवर मतलब उनका ना वो सही से नहीं चला था. एंड व्हेन इट कम्स टू विमेन, इट वाज 80% सक्सेस. So in that way, I see women are promising. When they do something, they do it, really they do it. मतलब अक्सर जब मेल की बात करते हैं, जो हमने देखा है, क्योंकि down the line we are connected to the society, they are usually serious about the benefits and जो डिविडेंड्स इसमें मिलते हैं, यानी कि इसमें सब्सिडीज कितनी है, तो वो उस पे ध्यान देके. लेकिन जब एक वीमेन आती है ना एज एन एंटरप्रेन्योर, दे रियली मीन इट एंड दे ट्राई टू मेक इट डन. And we have so many such examples which I personally do, जहाँ पे जिन हालांकि नंबर बहुत कम है, मतलब मैं बड़ा चढ़ा के नहीं बोलूंगा, लेकिन जितने भी इनिशिएटिव्स लिए हैं उसमें से मैं अपना कहूंगा कि सक्सेसफुल 100% विमेन एंटरप्रेन्योर्स बन गए, and they are doing really great.
Thank you. I had once heard this quote where when a group of people is asked to do a certain task, the women will raise their hands only when they're at least 90% sure that they can do it. Whereas the men, even if they're 20% sure or so, they'll raise their hands. So that's absolutely right. What I will do is have a final question, which I want you to answer in brief, so that we can open it out to the audience to both ask questions but also provide comments, because we have such a diverse group of think tankers and students. I'd like to get all your voices in. So while you prepare this question or comment, my last question to the panel is, you've now provided many ideas and they're all excellent ideas, right? Whether in terms of enabling women, ensuring that they're trained, ensuring that and the need for monitoring and evaluation, I absolutely agree. But if you had to prioritize one of these reforms or ideas that you think can be implemented in the next 5 years, what would that be? This could, if you want to choose something that you've not said before, that's also fine, or you can choose from what you've already said to see if there's one change that you would like to see happen and which you think is possible in the next 5 years for India. What would that be? And we will start with whoever's ready.
So it is very tough to answer directly to this question. But I talked about the major level at the corporate sector. See, at the ground level, what about these informal women where the child care is always compromised? See, child care is about the mental well-being of the child. They are ignored, okay? And they will have to take the lead when they grow. As we go older, they will grow. So there is a mental health issues with the child. So we have this Palna scheme at the Anganwadi level. So there are around 1,200 centers across India and around 1,60,000 odd beneficiaries. So that has to be enhanced. There is a very important need for the incremental growth of that, so that we have at the ground level. See, if you see KPMG, EY, I don't want to name the companies, they have these child care centers within those corporate houses, Johnson and Johnson. So they provide such sort of incentives to the women working for them. It is productive for them, actually. Now, what could be done? Create industrial parks and then create these child care centers within the industrial parks. Food processing, garments, manufacturing, electronics, employ women in the formal sector, provide them apprenticeship rather than these building programs where there is no impact. So he talked about the beneficiaries. Sir talked about the beneficiaries. I always have a problem with my students that beneficiary count is not the impact. You provided trainings to 1,000 women, and then you are saying there are 1,000 women we trained. It is the beneficiary count is never an impact. The impact is how they have translated into the job, how much money was generated through that job, and where that money was invested in the school education of their children, in the health and hygiene. These are the basic problems in the rural settings. So the real impact has to be looked at that level. So industrial parks, the policy push, put some money into it, and then those child care centers in those industrial parks, maybe they can cater to the needs of this whole discussion that we are having.
So before I answer your question, there are people who believe that there is no gender bias. So to them, I want to just say in general that don't look at metropolitan cities and women working in MNCs or schools or wherever and say that, well, if there are 10 women in this organization, what are you saying? There is no gender gap. That would be a lie, because if you go to tier 2 or tier 3 cities, you will actually get the pulse of the gender gap. So that exists, but at the same time, I don't want to answer to the male in this country or in this hall. I would like to tell women in this hall that, it's up to you how you want to be seen. And you have to take that bold step, and only then the rest will follow. And I say that with a lot of my personal experience. And my objective coming and sitting here was only to share my personal experience, as I don't work in any of those sectors. But, half of the time, our handicap is our own mind that, oh, I'm a woman, I can't do it. Maybe you can't do it, but what is the harm in trying? Give it a shot. At the max, what will happen? You will fail. You will at least learn a lesson out of it. So, because my students are also somewhere here in the group, so I wanted to tell this to women here, that you are your own, cheerleader. You don't wait for others to cheer for you and make way for you. You have to be so well learned and bold enough and brave enough that if you want to do something, you can do it. That should be your motto, that I can and I will. And I think it sounds very preachy and philosophical, but it's actually my experience that I took that step. And there were men who told me in early days of my career that, why you're touching Pakistan, why you're doing terrorism, just take Nepal. Nepal is simple, you can go to Nepal. And that's how they perceived it. So I still held my ground, and I knew that what I want to do from very early age. And now when I'm here, I feel elated, and I also see that how people also recognize you if you know that you are having it in you. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Would either of you like to?
Yeah, I know this will sound like setting the bar very low, but I think if we can start off with the anti-harassment laws being executed, implemented a little better, that would be a good place to start, including the formal sector. From my personal experience as well, just like how Soumya mentioned, a lot of times where you said that you can't go here, you can't do this project, it would be better if you just work out of an office and not go on the field. I think these are all problems that we have faced. I mean, these are all live realities for all of us. So we can only imagine how much worse it would be for people who do not come from the same socioeconomic background as us. So I think if we can start off with that, plus adding on to what Dr. Muniz said, I think unpaid labor is a huge component or a huge reason as to why women cannot come into the workforce. So I think if we can start implementing the existing schemes and the policies that are there, I think that would go a long way in improving our the women participation in labor force.
Thank you.
My last comment will be like, जैसे मैम ने अभी कहा कि women को अपने टांगों पे खड़ा होने की जरूरत है, but at the same time, being a male, and I request all the members who are here, women को एक मर्द की support की जरूरत होती है. Sometimes it is emotional, sometimes वो जो पीठ थपथपाना बोलते हैं. Once you will do that, फिर आप उसके wonders देखेंगे.
With that, I will hand over back to our wonderful organizers. Thank you, Arif and Ananda.